Is now 9:11, and we will call this meeting of the Texas Board of Pharmacy to order. As is our tradition, I will read the mission statement, and that is that the Texas Board of Pharmacy, as a leader in protecting the public health of the citizens of Texas, shall uphold quality standards for licensing and facilitate regulation that promotes innovative, multidisciplinary, and collaborative practices and education which produce quality care and positive patient outcomes. As far as our announcements, we did last time thank Bradley Miller for his service and for being the first technician on the Board of Pharmacy. We are very proud and very happy to announce that Stacy Hightower has been appointed by the governor and is our newest member of the board, representing technicians, and we are so happy to have you. As always, when you look at our meeting procedures, we do follow all of our Robert's Rules of Order. The Wi-Fi is posted. For those that would like continued education, you'll need to stay for the entire time, and we'll have a QR code. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Danny for the roll.
Thank you, Julie. Donna Montemayor. Here. Donnie Lewis. Here. Rick Fernandez. Haisha Freeman. Here. Randy Martin. Here. Stacy Hightower. Ian Shaw. He's not here. Suzette Tijerina. Here. Rick Tisch. Here. And Jenny Yoakum.
All right, we do have a quorum. To make note, we did yesterday have our annual training, and it was held here in the building on November the 3rd, 2025. Board members, I will remind you that you were sent our meeting minutes ahead of time. We did have our last business meeting on August the 5th. At this time, if there are no changes to be made, I will entertain a motion to approve. Donna has made a motion. Donnie has made the second. All those in favor? Any opposed? The minutes are then approved. John, I will go ahead and turn it over to you for our final adoption of rules and C.1.
Thank you, Madam President. Board members, in the rule PDFs that you've been provided, there are bookmarks with links to the lines with edits. Also, for the rules that are up for adoption, you have received copies of the orders and preambles in the OneDrive link that was sent to you, but you also have them on your computers. Looking for the rules for adoption. The rules up for adoption were proposed at the August 4th, 2025 board meeting and published in the September 26, 2025 issue of the Texas Register. The first one, C.1.1, is amendments to 281.63 concerning considerations for criminal offenses. These amendments, if adopted, update the board's disciplinary guidelines concerning the imprisonment of a licensee, a registrant, or an owner of a pharmacy following a felony conviction or deferred adjudication in accordance with Senate Bill 1080 and clarify certain provisions to align more closely to the existing statute. The first change you're going to see is on lines 60 through 72. It provides the board may revoke a license or registration upon the imprisonment of the licensee, the registrant, or the owner of a pharmacy following a felony conviction or deferred adjudication. The board shall revoke a license or registration upon the imprisonment of the licensee, the registrant, or the owner of a pharmacy following and there's a list, felony conviction or deferred adjudication for an offense that directly relates to the occupation of a licensee or registrant or the operation of a pharmacy, an offense listed in Article 42.054, the Code of Criminal Procedure, or a sexually violent offense as defined by Article 62.001 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, felony community supervision revocation, revocation of parole, or revocation of mandatory supervision. Jumping to lines 78 through 84, the board has determined that the criminal offenses listed in subsection I of this section directly relate to the occupation of a licensee or registrant or the operation of a pharmacy. For all other offenses not listed in this section, and considering whether a criminal conviction or deferred adjudication directly relates to the duties and responsibilities of a licensee, a registrant, or of an owner of a pharmacy, the board shall consider the following factors: Look here to lines 85 through 93, and it lists out the nature and seriousness of the crime, the relationship of the crime to the purpose for requiring a license or registration to engage in the occupation of the licensee or registrant or the operation of a pharmacy, the extent to which a licensee or a license or registration might afford the licensee or registrant an opportunity to repeat the criminal activity in which the person had been involved, the relationship of the crime to the ability, capacity, or fitness required to perform the duties and discharge the responsibilities of the licensee or registrant. And what's being added here is any correlation between the elements of the crime and the duties and responsibilities of the license or registration. Lines 94 through 120 provides the board has authority to impose disciplinary action as authorized by the Act for those criminal offenses that provide grounds for discipline under the Act. In reaching a decision regarding the severity of the disciplinary sanction to impose on a license or registration, the board shall, in its discretion, unless otherwise specified in Section 281.64 of this title, relating to sanctions for criminal offenses, also determine the person's fitness to perform the duties and discharge the responsibilities of a licensee or registrant by evaluating and balancing these factors in the following priority, with the first being the highest priority. Number 1, the extent and nature of the person's past criminal activity. Number 2, the amount of time that has elapsed since the person's last criminal activity. Number 3, the person's rehabilitation or rehabilitative effort while incarcerated or following release as corroborated by extrinsic evidence. 4, the age of the person at the time of the commission of the crime, if younger than 21 years of age at the time of the crime. 5, the conduct and work activity of the person prior to and following the criminal activity. And 6, this is the new part, evidence of the person's compliance with any conditions of community supervision, parole, or mandatory supervision. And 7, other evidence of the person's present fitness, including letters of recommendation. In order to establish the factors in subsection G of this section, a person with a conviction or deferred adjudication shall, to the extent possible, secure and provide to the board the recommendations specified in subsection G7 of this section. And there were no comments received regarding this rule.
Thank you, John. Questions, comments? What's the pleasure of the board? Randy has made a motion to approve. We have a second from Rick Tisch.
Motion to propose.
I'm sorry, motion to propose.
Oh, motion to
No,
adopt.
this is-
Sorry.
Motion to adopt. It is approval. Sorry. So we have a motion from Randy and a second from Rick Tisch to adopt. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. John?
The next one, Madam President, we're going to look at is C1.2, and that's amendment concerning licensees and registrations for military service members, military veterans, and military spouses. And we're going to be looking at two rules together here. The amendments update the alternative licensing procedures, expedited licensing procedures, and interim license procedures for a military service member, military veteran, or military spouse in accordance with House Bill 5629. And they establish provisional license procedures for a military service member, military veteran, or military spouse in accordance with Senate Bill 1818 and make grammatical corrections. Now, board members, you have two versions in front of you, and the one we need to look at is the revised version. So make sure you click on that. All right. The first one we're going to go through is C1.2.1, amendments to 283.12 concerning pharmacists. And we're going to start off on lines 63 through 76, alternative licensing procedure. For the purpose of section 55.004 of the Occupations Code, a military service member, military veteran, or military spouse may complete the following alternative procedures to apply for a pharmacist license if the applicant holds a current license issued by another state that is similar in scope of practice to the license in this state and is in good standing with that state's licensing authority, or within the 5 years preceding the application date held a pharmacist license in this state. And the first kind is the provisional license. On receipt by the board of an application for a pharmacist license in accordance with this subsection, the board shall issue a provisional license to the applicant while the board processes the application. A provisional license issued under this subsection expires on the earlier of the date the board approves or denies the provisional license holder's application for the license, or the 180th date after the date the provisional license is issued. Jumping down to lines 133 through 140, talks about expedited licensing procedure. And for the purpose of Section 55.005 of the Occupations Code, a military service member, military veteran, military spouse may complete the following expedited procedures to apply for a pharmacist license if the applicant holds a current license issued by another state that is similar in scope of practice to the license in this state and is in good standing with that state's licensing authority, or within the 5 years preceding the application date, held a pharmacist license in this state. Jumping to lines 189 through 196, interim license for military service member or military spouse. In accordance with Section 55.0041 of the Occupations Code, a military service member or military spouse may be issued an interim pharmacist license if the member or spouse currently holds a license similar in scope of practice issued by the licensing authority of another state and is in good standing with that licensing authority as specified in Section 55.0042 of the Occupations Code. Jumping down to lines 197 through 215. Before engaging in the practice of pharmacy, the military service member or military spouse shall submit an application that includes the following: a copy of the military member's military order showing relocation to this state. If the applicant is a military spouse, a copy of the military spouse's marriage certificate. A notarized affidavit affirming under penalty of perjury that the applicant is the person described and identified in the application. All statements in the application are true, correct, and complete. The applicant understands the scope of practice for a pharmacist license in this state and will not perform outside that scope of practice. And the applicant is in good standing in each state in which the applicant holds or has held a pharmacist license. Jumping to lines 216 through 218, a military service member or military spouse applying for an interim license under the subsection may not practice pharmacy in this state until issued an interim pharmacist license. Jumping to lines 219 through 242, a military service member or military spouse applying for an interim license under this subsection, the board shall: A, determine whether the state in which the applicant is licensed issues licenses similar in scope of practice to a pharmacist license issued by the board, and B, notify the applicant that the board is issuing the interim license, the application is incomplete, or the board is unable to issue the interim license because of a pharmacist license issued by the board is not similar in scope of practice to the applicant's license. A military service member or military spouse may engage in the practice of pharmacy under an interim license issued under this subsection only for the period during which the military service member, or with respect to a military spouse, the military service member to whom the spouse is married, is stationed at a military installation in this state. In the event of a divorce or similar event that affects a person's status as a military spouse, the former spouse may continue to engage in the practice of pharmacy under an interim license issued under this subsection until the third anniversary of the date the spouse submitted the application required under paragraph 1 of this subsection. Finally, while engaged in the practice of pharmacy in this state, the military service member or military spouse shall comply with all the laws and regulations applicable to the practice of pharmacy in this state. And that is that rule. But the next one we're going to jump to, well, again, we're going to take these up together, is C 1.2.2, amendments to 297.10 concerning pharmacy technicians. Once again, the amendments update the alternative licensing procedure, expedited licensing procedures, and interim license procedures for a military service member, military veteran, or military spouse in accordance with House Bill 5629, and establish provisional license procedures for a military service member, military veteran, or military spouse in accordance with Senate Bill 1818, and make grammatical corrections. Once again, there are two versions, and you are looking at the revised version. Starting on line 63 through 77, alternative registration procedure. For purpose of Section 55.004 of the Occupations Code, a military service member, military veteran, or military spouse may complete the following alternative procedures to apply for a pharmacy technician registration if the applicant holds a current registration issued by another state that is similar in scope of practice to the registration in this state and is in good standing with that state's licensing authority, or within the 5 years preceding the application date, held a pharmacy technician registration in this state. Provisional registration. On receipt by the board of an application for a pharmacy technician registration in accordance with this subsection, the board shall issue a provisional registration to the applicant while the board processes the application. Provisional registration issued under this subsection expires on the earlier of the date the board approves or denies the provisional registration holder's application for the registration, or the 180th date after the date the provisional registration is issued. Jumping to lines 101 through 110, talks about expedited registration procedure. And for purpose of section 55.005 of the Occupations Code, a military service member, military veteran, or military spouse may complete the following expedited procedures to apply for a pharmacy technician registration if the applicant holds a current registration issued by another state that is similar in scope of practice to the registration in this state and is in good standing with that state's licensing authority, or within the 5 years preceding the application date held a pharmacy technician registration in this state. Jumping to lines 146 through 154, it talks about the interim registration for military service member or military spouse. And in accordance with section 55.0041 of the Occupations Code, a military service member or military spouse may be issued an interim pharmacy technician registration if the member or spouse currently holds a registration similar in scope of practice issued by the licensing authority of another state and is in good standing with that licensing authority as specified in section 55.0042 of the Occupations Code. Lines 155 through 174, it provides that before engaging in pharmacy technician duties, the military service member or military spouse shall submit an application that includes a copy of the military member's order showing relocation to the state. If the applicant is a military spouse, a copy of the military spouse's marriage certificate, and a notarized affidavit affirming under penalty of perjury that the applicant is the person described and identified in the application. All statements in the application are true, correct, and complete. The applicant understands the scope of practice for a pharmacy technician registration in this state and will not perform outside of that scope of practice. And the applicant is in good standing in each state in which the applicant holds or has held a pharmacy technician registration. Lines 175 through 177 provide that a military service member or military spouse applying for an interim registration under this subsection may not engage in pharmacy technician duties in this state until issued an interim pharmacy technician registration. Lines 178 through 191 provide that for a military service member or military spouse applying for an interim registration under this subsection, the board shall determine whether the state in which the applicant is registered issues registration similar in scope of practice to a pharmacy technician registration issued by the board, and notify the applicant that the board is issuing the interim registration, the application is incomplete, or the board is unable to issue the interim registration because a pharmacy technician registration issued by the board is not similar in scope of practice to the applicant's registration. Jumping to lines 192 through 196, a military service member or military spouse may engage in pharmacy technician duties under an interim registration issued under this subsection only for the period during which the military service member, or with respect to a military spouse, the military service member to whom the spouse is married, is stationed at a military installation in this state. And the new part that's been added, that's revised, is lines 197 through 201. That provides that in the event of a divorce or similar event that affects a person's status as a military spouse, the former spouse may continue to engage in pharmacy technician duties under an interim registration issued under this subsection until the third anniversary of the date the spouse submitted the application required under paragraph 1 of this subsection. And finally, on lines 202 through 204, it provides that while engaged in pharmacy technician duties in the state, the military service member or military spouse shall comply with all of the laws and regulations applicable to practicing as a pharmacy technician in this state. And there were no comments on either of these rules.
Thank you, John. Board members, what is your pleasure on this?
I just had a question. Mr. John, what about military members that have a significant other, they're not married, but they're common law, whatever? What happens to those? Where does that fit in here? Because they're not, technically, I guess they're a spouse, but they're not really married, because that repeats here the married side of this. What happens to those individuals? I'm sure that might come up.
So the two statutes that are driving this, you can see in there that they merely reflect on like requiring like a marriage certificate It doesn't specify what kind of, persons that has to be, but it does require the merit certificate. So if they don't have that, then it wouldn't be applicable.
Other questions? Do we have a motion? So Randy has made a motion to adopt, and Donnie has seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, John, if you'll take us through C.1.3.
Yes, Madam President. What we're going to talk about now are amendments concerning common ownership. And what we are doing here is defining these terms that will help clarify when you are allowed to engage in services allowed under common ownership. Example might be distribution of prepackaged prescription drugs. And the first one we're going to look at is C.1.3.1, amendments at 291.31. This is regarding community pharmacies, or Class A definitions. And on lines 74 through 76, it adds the definition of a common ownership as defined as two or more pharmacies with an identical owner of record with the board, or that have owners of record with the board that are a parent, subsidiary, or affiliate of one another under Section 1.002 of the Business Organizations Code. It also adds on line 164 through 165 the definition of an owner of record, and that is defined as the direct owner of the pharmacy provided on the pharmacy's application for a pharmacy license or most recent approved change of ownership form. And Madam President, I think we're going to take all of these together.
That is correct.
Okay. The next one, C 1.3.2, amendments to 291.52 regarding Class B or nuclear pharmacies. Lines 73 through 75, again, provide the definition of common ownership as two or more pharmacies with an identical owner of record with the board, or that have owners of record with the board that are a parent, subsidiary, or affiliate of one another under Section 1.002 of the Business Organizations Code. Lines 141 through 142, again, define owner of record as the direct owner of the pharmacy provided on the pharmacy's application for a pharmacy license or most recent approved change of ownership form. The next one, C 1.3.3, amendments to 291.72, concerns Class C or institutional pharmacies. And on lines 73 through 75, defines common ownership as two or more pharmacies with an identical owner of record with the board, or that have owners of record with the board that are a parent, subsidiary, or affiliate of one another under Section 1.002 of the Business Organizations Code. Lines 162 through 163 provide the definition that an owner of record is the direct owner of the pharmacy provided on the pharmacy's application for a pharmacy license or most recent approved change of ownership form. Next, C 1.3.4, amendments to 291.120, services provided by pharmacies. Again, we're talking about definitions. Lines 49 through 53 provide the common ownership defined as two or more pharmacies with an identical owner of record with the board, or that have owners of record with the board that are a parent, subsidiary, or affiliate of one another under Section 1.002 of the Business Organizations Code. And the next definition is owner of record, which is defined as the direct owner of the pharmacy provided on the pharmacy's application for a pharmacy license or most recent approved change of ownership form. The next one, C 1.3.5, amendments to 297.2, pharmacy technicians and technician trainees. Lines 48 through 52, we have both definitions. And the first one is common ownership, two or more pharmacies with an identical owner of record with the board, or that have owners of record with the board that are a parent, subsidiary, or affiliate of one another under Section 1.002 of the Business Organizations Code. And it defines owner of record as the direct owner of the pharmacy provided on the pharmacy's application for a pharmacy license or most recent approved change of ownership form. Madam President, there were no comments received regarding these rules.
Thank you, John. All right, so we're going to take all 5 of these together. Bless you. Any questions? Is there a motion? Rick Tisch has made a motion to adopt. Second. Rick Fernandez has made a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. John, if you want to take us to C.2 in our proposed rules.
Yes, Madam President. The first one, we're going to look at the first two together. The first one is C 2.1.1, amendments to 291.33, operational standards. And these amendments, if adopted, allow for written information reinforcing patient counseling to be provided electronically unless requested in a hard copy format It also removes the requirement to document the request. So on lines 241 through 245, it provides that written information must be in plain language designed for the patient and printed in an easily readable font size comparable to but no smaller than 10-point Times Roman. This information may be provided to the patient in an electronic format, such as by email, unless, that's what's been added, the patient or patient's agent requests the information in a hard copy format. And then it cuts the requirement that the pharmacy documents the request. The next one that we're essentially doing the same thing here is C2.1.2, amendments to 291-104, operational standards. And on lines 152 through 156, it provides that written information must be in plain language designed for the patient and printed in an easily readable font comparable to but no smaller than 10-point Times Roman. This information may be provided to the patient on an electronic format, such as by email, unless the patient or patient's agent requests the information in a hard copy format. And once again, it removes the requirement that the pharmacy documents the request.
All right. Questions, comments? Motion to propose? Donnie Lewis has made a motion to propose. Do I have a second? Rick Tisch has made a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. John, if you want to take us to C.2.2.
Yes, Madam President. I think we're going to do these two together as well.
That's correct.
So the first one, C 2.2.1, amendments at 295.8, continuing education requirements. Board members, these two rules that we're going to talk about implement Senate Bill 912, which requires a CE tracking system be implemented, and clarifies that the record retention requirements apply to all CE. So we're going to start off on lines 6 through 10, talking about authority. In accordance with Section 559.053 of the Texas Pharmacy Act, all pharmacists shall complete and report 30 contact hours of approved continuing education, and, this is the new part, any courses required under subsection D1 of the section obtained during the previous license period in order to renew their license to practice pharmacy. And we're going to jump down to lines 52 through 56. Taken in passing the standardized pharmacy examination, the NAPLEX, during the preceding license period as a Texas licensed pharmacist, which shall be equivalent to the number of continuing education hours necessary to renew a license as specified in subsection A1 of this section. This paragraph does not apply to the standardized pharmacy examination, the NAPLEX, that an individual uses to obtain initial licensure as a pharmacist. Lines 58 through 63, this is regarding the renewal of a pharmacist license. To renew a license to practice pharmacy, a pharmacist shall report on the renewal application completion of at least 30 contact hours of continuing education, any specialty requirements to the pharmacist, example being a preceptor, sterile compounding, immunization, drug therapy management, and any courses required under this paragraph. We're going to jump down to lines 77. The license of a pharmacist who fails to report completion of the required number of continuing education contact hours or any courses required under this paragraph shall not be renewed, and the pharmacist shall not be issued a renewal certificate for the license period until such time as the pharmacist successfully completes the required continuing education requirements and reports the completion to the board. Jumping to lines 111 through 114, we're going to add a subparagraph D. We're going to include a couple shalls, and then we're going to jump all the way down to lines 151 through 159. This provides that the pharmacists who teach these courses may receive credit toward their continuing education, but such credit may be received only once for teaching the same course during a license period. The additional part that's added here is documentation of the course instruction shall be a signed letter from the dean of the professional degree program or advanced pharmacy degree program that contains the course title and completion date, the name of the pharmacist who taught the course, and the portion of the course taught by the pharmacist if the course was co-taught. The pharmacist who co-teaches the course shall receive continuing education credit in proportion to the percentage of the course taught by the pharmacist rounded to the nearest contact hour. Now, board members, on lines 180 through 195, there's going to be some removal of some courses and are available for credit. And the first one is, again, on lines 180 through 195. Attendance at Texas State Board of Pharmacy meetings shall be recognized for continuing education credit as follows. Pharmacists shall receive credit for 3 contact hours toward their continuing education requirements for attending a full public board business meeting in its entirety. A maximum of 6 contact hours are allowed for attendance at a board meeting during a licensed period. And proof of attendance for a complete board meeting shall be a certificate issued by the Texas State Board of Pharmacy. Again, this is being cut. The next part that's being cut is participation in a Texas State Board of Pharmacy appointed task force shall be recognized for continuing education credit as follows. Pharmacists shall receive credit for 3 contact hours toward the continuing education requirement for participating in a Texas State Board of Pharmacy appointed task force, and proof of participation for a task force shall be a certificate issued by the Texas State Board of Pharmacy. Jumping down to lines 203 through 224, some additional courses are being cut. Our availability for credit are being cut. And we're going to look at pharmacists shall receive credit toward their continuing education requirements for programs and courses approved by other state boards of pharmacy as follows. Pharmacists shall receive credit for the number of hours for the program or course as specified by the other state board of pharmacy, and proof of attendance at a program or course approved by another state board of pharmacy shall be a certificate or other documentation that indicates one, the name of the participant, the title and completion date of the program, the name of the approved provider sponsoring or co-sponsoring the program, number of contact hours and or CEUs awarded, a dated certifying signature of the provider, and documentation that the program is approved by the other state board of pharmacy. Also being cut is completion of an Institute of Safe Medication Practices, ISMP, medication safety self-assessment for hospital pharmacies or for community/ambulatory pharmacies shall be recognized for continuing education credit as follows. Pharmacists shall receive credit for 3 contact hours toward the continuing education requirement for completion of ISMP medication safety self-assessment, and proof of completion of an ISMP medication safety self-assessment shall be continuing education certificate provided by an ACPE approved provider for completion of an assessment or documentation of an ISMP showing completion of an assessment. On lines 254, we're going to add or course completion to retention of records. Jump to line 249 through 252. Provides that for audit of records by the board shall use continuing education tracking system described in subsection G of this section to audit the records of pharmacists for verification of reported continuing education, contact hours, or course completion. On lines 253 through 263, it provides that upon written request, a pharmacist shall provide to the board documentation of proof of all continuing education contact hours and course completions reported during a specified license period. Jumping to lines 266 through 272, this is subparagraph G, continuing education tracking requirements. As specified in section 112.103 of the Texas Occupations Code, proof of completion of all continuing education requirements shall be reported to the board through the board's continuing education tracking system. A pharmacist shall not be issued a renewal certificate for the license period unless the pharmacist has reported this completion of all required contact hours and any courses required under subsection D1 of this section through the continuing education tracking system. The next one we're going to look at, board members, is C 2.2.2, amendments to 297.8. Again, this is discussing continuing education requirements. And as I mentioned previously, this implements Senate Bill 912, which requires a CE tracking system and clarifies that the record retention requirements apply to all CE. And here we're talking about pharmacy technicians. So on lines 10 through 15, it provides that all pharmacy technicians shall complete and report 20 contact hours of approved continuing education and any courses required under subsection B4 of this section obtained during the previous renewal period in order to renew their registration as a pharmacy technician. No more than 5 of the 20 contact hours may be earned at the pharmacy technician's workplace through in-service education and training under the direct supervision of the pharmacist or pharmacists. Lines 25 through 28 provide to renew a registration. A pharmacy technician shall report on the renewal application completion of at least 20 contact hours of continuing education and any courses required under this paragraph. Lines 36 through 39 provide that pharmacy technicians are required to maintain records of completion of approved continuing education for 3 years from the date of reporting the contact hours or course completion on a renewal application. Jumping to line 45 through 48, the board shall use continuing education tracking system described in subsection C of this section to audit the records of pharmacy technicians for verification of reported continuing education contact hours or course completion. Jumping to lines 117 through 125, pharmacy technicians who teach these courses may receive credit toward their continuing education, but such credit may be received only once for teaching the same course during a licensed period. Documentation of the course instruction shall be a signed letter from the dean of the training program, professional degree program that contains the course title and completion date, the name of the pharmacy technician who taught the course, and the portion of the course taught by the pharmacy technician if the course was co-taught. A pharmacy technician who co-teaches a course shall receive continuing education credit in proportion to the percentage of the course taught by the pharmacist, rounded to the nearest contact hour. Jumping to lines 146 through 161. Again, these are opportunities for continuing education that are being cut. The first part being attendance at Texas State Board of Pharmacy meetings shall be recognized for continuing education credit as follows. Pharmacy technicians shall receive credit for 3 contact hours toward their continuing education requirement for attending a full public board business meeting in its entirety. A maximum of 6 contact hours are allowed for attendance at a board meeting during a renewal period. And proof of attendance for a complete board meeting shall be a certificate issued by the Texas State Board of Pharmacy. Also being cut is participation in a Texas State Board of Pharmacy appointed task force, which shall be recognized for continuing education credit as follows. Pharmacy technicians shall receive credit for 3 contact hours toward their continuing education requirement for participating in a Texas State Board of Pharmacy appointed task force. Proof of participation for a task force shall be a certificate issued by the Texas State Board of Pharmacy. Jumping to lines 169 through 190, these are some additional opportunities that are being cut. Pharmacy technicians shall receive credit toward their continuing education requirements for programs or courses approved by other state boards of pharmacy as follows. Pharmacy technicians shall receive credit for the number of hours for the program or course as specified by the other state board of pharmacy. Proof of attendance at a program or course approved by another state board of pharmacy shall be a certificate or other documentation that indicates the name of the participant, title and completion date of the program, name of the approved provider sponsoring or co-sponsoring the program, number of contact hours awarded, a dated certifying signature of the provider, and documentation that the program is approved by the other state board of pharmacy. Also being cut is completion of an Institute of Safe Medication Practices, or ISMP, medication safety self-assessment for hospital pharmacies or for community/ambulatory pharmacies shall be recognized for continuing education credit as follows. Pharmacy technicians shall receive credit for 3 contact hours toward their continuing education requirement for completion of an ISMP medication safety self-assessment. Proof of completion of an ISMP medication safety self-assessment shall be a continuing education certificate provided by an ACPE approved provider for completion of an assessment or documentation of ISMP showing completion of an assessment. Jumping down to lines 216 through 222, this provides the continuing education tracking system, and as specified in section 112.103 of the Texas Occupations Code, proof of completion of all continuing education requirements shall be reported to the board through the board's continuing education tracking system. A pharmacist shall not be issued a renewal certificate for the license period unless the pharmacist has reported the completion of all required contact hours and any courses required under subsection B4 of this section through the continuing education tracking system.
All right. What is the pleasure of the board? Comments, questions?
I had a quick question.
Yes, sir.
So, this tracking system, is it integrated with something else, NABP, or how does this work, this tracking system?
Well, the tracking system needs to be implemented by the statute, 912. has to be implemented by September 1st of next year. And that'll be integrated with our system so that when people update it, we'll be able to access that.
So you manually put in CEs, is that what you're saying, or reports in from, like we have NABP tracking already, right?
So NABP tracking would no longer fall under this. So we're going to have to go out and do a procurement process for a vendor to implement this. The NABP system doesn't do everything the statute now requires us to have in place by September 1st. So we don't have the vendor yet, so we can't answer specific questions. We're working on that. But we're trying to get the ball rolling so that the rule can be in place for September 1st.
Would we anticipate that, I mean, it's a standard that most pharmacists have their stuff on the NABP site, that it would be integrated or that you could upload it kind of thing instead of having to manually type everything in again?
I don't know. It'll
Would
depend
make
on.
it a requirement or something?
Hopefully.
We can look into it. I don't know what vendors are available and how many choices we'll have.
And we have exceptions. In Texas, we have exceptions that you don't know how it's going to work or what those vendors can do. I think, and this is a different point, but from the board standpoint, education is really important. You know, whenever we're doing the law updates, this will be part of that presentation that anticipate this September 1st. Have those CEs done because, like it says, the license won't be renewed until it's done.
So we are eliminating CE for attendance to a board meeting?
So this was never ACPE CE. It was a certificate that we issued. So the question is, how can a certificate be loaded into it? And so that's where,
Well, the human trafficking link is the same way. It's a certificate and not an ACPE.
So each one of those, each exception that we try to create will cost additional money for us. We have our system and then the CE tracking system. And the CE tracking system will speak to our system, so we will have to start uploading everything into our system. And so each time we make a change that's outside of the ACPE, there will have to be programming costs on this side to get it uploaded into our system. Human trafficking is required by statute, so we can't eliminate that one. And we were not awarded any funding for this, so it's going to have to come out of our existing budget to make any sort of programming changes to our system to upload anything that's not ACPE accredited.
And do we have any idea on costs so far?
We need to get the
you
vendor
speak up just a
first.
little, ask your question again. I don't think we heard you.
We don't have any idea on costs.
Not yet.
Not yet.
If I can. Does that feed into why we are looking at eliminating some of the opportunities for
Yes.
CE credit?
Yes.
Potential cost, and we don't know what that cost is yet? I mean, if it's minimal, I have a concern with cutting education opportunities. If it's cost prohibitive, we need to weigh that. But if it's a minimal cost, I'm kind of wondering why.
So this is a proposal, and if you propose now, it allows us time to get written feedback, and then also hopefully have more information on who the vendor might be and everything. So what we're doing is getting ahead so that you can propose this now, get all the feedback, hopefully have more information, and then we can have it in place for an adoption, because we need to have everything aligned up so that we are implementing this program either on September 1st or sooner. So if we wait until we have all of the information, you won't have your rules in place to implement the program in time.
No, okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And some of these things, like the ISMP assessment for hospitals, that's decades old. And nowadays, people aren't even using that tool. So that's an outdated, and to Randy's a hospital guy, so that one's outdated. So it makes sense to even clean some of this up. These are manual processes, you know, to convert it to CE and then to upload it into the system and all of those things. And so efficiency on something like this is really, really important. Mhm. Right.
And one other thing to add, I met with our licensing director, and we went over all of the different CE programs and course opportunities. and the ones that we're cutting are the ones that were not being utilized. As Danny indicated, some are outdated. There are some that we simply never receive any requests for or questions on. And so, yeah, as Megan indicated, it'll be a great opportunity for us to get feedback from the public. Maybe there are people very interested in these particular programs, but our impression is that they are not being utilized.
I'll say I appreciate that. If something's outdated, okay, but when the day comes, I'll have questions about cutting off future opportunities. Just because someone hasn't historically used it doesn't mean I necessarily would be on board with closing the door for people in the future.
What would it do to pharmacy technicians that like have to register also through the PTCB, and we have to report our hours there, which go through the CPE monitor right now? Does that mean there will be, I hate to say double work because I'm not opposed to that, but that's going to be double the work for your technicians.
Yeah, so that's the same thing as NEBP or
Right.
regular CPE monitoring. It'll be double work for pharmacists. So until we have a vendor in place, we won't know.
It'll be part of the process, part of the kind of vetting process or the procurement process.
So
that
how
vendor.
far off is NABP's model from what statute is requiring?
Off.
That far off. Okay.
Yeah, we discussed with them leading up to legislative session because we anticipated, we saw this bill and they were unable to do it.
And part of the reason are we have a lot of exceptions. I mean, and it's difficult to sort of make it work, I guess.
So I actually have a proposed language change on some of this. So looking at, on 295.8, the section on courses, so line 153 through 159, and then the same language or the similar language that appears on 297.8, 119 to 125. So in many of these programs, dean may not be the head of the program, especially the technician component. And also deans are pretty detached from curricula and course assignments and that type of thing. Doesn't mean they might be, but what I would suggest is changing the language to be, it's usually actually a department head or a program director or an associate dean for academic affairs. So we could, I'd propose one of two different language changes. One is just replace dean with academic administrator and then putting some EGs in the corner. That would be dean, program director, department head. Alternatively, we could list those out: dean, department head, program director, or other. Alternatively, I always hate generating extra paperwork, so I don't know how concerned we would be about misrepresentation here. But what we could do is what a lot of CPD type programs that include this as an element, like some of the like CPPS and BCPS, they actually just require a copy of the syllabus, which is the official document and should have who's teaching the course and what dates and all that. So we could either require the syllabus, or if we did want to do a letter, I just want to expand it out so we're not bottlenecking this and making it unnecessarily laborious to get a hold of a dean that's traveling to Texas Pharmacy Congress when you need it signed.
It looks like the section that you're looking at is only for a pharmacist who is teaching the course, not
Correct.
for everyone. So
Correct.
if I'm teaching the course and I'm at a school, it's the dean saying that it's okay for me to do that kind of thing. I don't know where having the syllabus and all that kind of stuff is necessarily required.
Well, it's asking for proof, right? And my point is that when I was working in a college of pharmacy, to give you an example, my dean had no idea what courses I was teaching. That was managed by the department head. There's an associate dean for academic affairs that typically runs the curriculum. So I would just ask that we open this up. So either we could do a syllabus and there's no letter, you just submit the syllabus and that's it. Or if we're concerned about misrepresentation, we could leave it as the letter and maybe just open up who could sign it.
I would be okay with opening it up to have the associate dean or whoever is particularly involved in that course. I don't see the need for a syllabus to be uploaded.
So do we have a proposal with, well, I guess first we need to, are we in agreement with opening that up? And if so, do we have a motion to propose with that language change? And Iman, are you good with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Before we propose, just one more question.
Okay.
When we go to look for the software, whatever that is going to be staff members that go to look for that? And would there be pharmacist staff members that would do that?
So yes, it'll be staff members. I don't know who will be assigned to it, but it'll go through the formal request for proposals process that's required for contracting by state agencies.
Okay.
Megan, I just had a question on that service, that new company. Does that interface with the medical board, the nursing board, other boards that require CEs, or is it just separate for us?
So this statute applies to all of them. I don't know what vendor we'll choose, and I don't know what vendor they'll choose. So we can't speak to that at this point.
But it'll be several vendors, or we're not just
It
one?
could be. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how many vendors there are. I don't know who's
Okay.
going to submit proposals. I don't know if there are multiple ones, if the medical board will have a preference for one or rank one higher than we do. It could be, they could all be the same. They could all be different. It's really hard to say.
But ultimately, who chooses?
We choose ours.
For ours,
They
of course.
choose theirs.
Okay.
According to all of the rules that are in place and required of us.
Thank you.
I have one other question, I guess, and if we needed to have something covered here. So, based on the language, like what I was seeing at the very end, to comply with the statute on each of
which
these
one?
sections, on each of them,
Okay.
on C221 lines 266 272, and then the similar language on C222. Do we need to insert, so this is specific about the renewal period and all that. I may have missed it, but sometimes we use CE as as part of disciplinary action or as part of a remedial plan or something like that. I would assume we would want this to roll into that same system and track it in that system, but I don't know that I see language, and I don't know if we need it. I'm asking, I guess. Do we need language there that addresses that?
I don't think so. So the way this is written, it says proof of completion of all continuing education requirements shall be reported to the board through the board's continuing education tracking system. So the assumption there is that it will be reported in that way. However, when we're talking about disciplinary CE, there's a monitoring team and enforcement that watches all that and ensures that they complete what they're supposed to. So that would also be manually monitored by some individuals on Caroline's team.
All right. What is the pleasure of the board?
I propose that we make the addition of the dean, associate dean, open up that little piece and propose the role.
Do we have a second? We have a motion with the change by Donna and a second by Donnie. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, Madam President. Oh, there we go. We're going to go to C.3 now, do our rule review. And behind C.3, board members, you're going to find the rule review plan for fiscal year 2026 through 2029, review and approval. And state law requires that you review your rules on a 4-year cycle. And while state law requires you review the rules on a 4-year cycle, what you're looking to see here is if you still need these rules. It is not about the content of them. So looking at C 3.1, these are for proposal today. C 3.1.1, Chapter 291 concerning nuclear pharmacies or Class Bs. And C 3.1.2, Chapter 309 concerning substitution of drugs. And again, this is for proposal.
All right. Again, this is not whether or not we like the words. It's just whether or not we need them. So do we have a motion to propose? I have a motion to propose from Randy, a second from Rick Fernandez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. All right. At this time, we're going to skip down board members to E.2, and I'll ask Raquel from PRN and Caroline to take us through E.2.
All right. Well, E.2.1 is your report on the participants in the board's peer assistance program. I'm going to direct your attention to the bottom chart this time because it completed fiscal year 25. And so you're looking at the fourth quarter numbers where you added participants in the fourth quarter. And then those tallies were added to the top chart for the FY25 total number of participants. And those are broken out by those voluntary participants in the peer assistance program, and then those that are board ordered by a disciplinary order that you've entered. Also the number of students. And I'll just point out the recidivism rate. This is included, but going forward, this is a matrix that the Legislative Budget Board is not going to be requiring after this fiscal year. So those were individuals who didn't complete the program at certain benchmark measures, but it's not required going forward.
All right. Double check that your microphone's on or pull it a little closer. Pull the microphone a little closer.
Is your button, is your light green?
Okay.
Test. I think this one's better. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. On August 19th, 2025, PRN spoke to the incoming P1 student pharmacists as part of orientation week at the University of Texas at Tyler College of Pharmacy. At this presentation, PRN discussed PRN's history and the services we provide, as well as mental health and substance abuse statistics for adults and healthcare professionals in the U.S. In September, PRN conducted its annual performance audit for fiscal year 25, and this performance audit measures exclude pharmacists and pharmacy interns who are also being monitored by TSBP. The numbers include only licensed pharmacists and licensed pharmacy interns who are volunteer participants in PRN. This performance audit reviews data on 3 key items. 1, the total number of participants in the PRN program who hold a pharmacist license or pharmacy internship license and are enrolled in PRN. 2, the recidivism rate is defined as the percentage of individuals who experienced a relapse 3 years after successfully completing their first year of sobriety while enrolled in PRN. And 3rd, the 1-year completion rate is defined as the percentage of individuals who successfully completed their first year of sobriety while enrolled with PRN. The fiscal year 25 audit results were the following. Licensed pharmacists enrolled in PRN, 58. Licensed pharmacy interns enrolled in PRN, 2. The recidivism rate was 30%, and the 1-year completion rate was 85.7%. The LBB numbers for that quarter were submitted to TSBP on September 10th, and these include all licensed pharmacists and pharmacy students enrolled in PRN. We had 0 volunteer pharmacy students, 2 board-ordered pharmacy students, 17 volunteer pharmacists, and 39 board-ordered pharmacists. The last section of the report is our financials, and that you can find that on the last page with the expense report.
All
Are there
right.
any questions?
Do we have any questions for Caroline or for Raquel?
I have a question. On the audit results, the recidivism rate and the 1-year completion rate, how do those percentages compare to the industry, other states? Is that good number, bad number?
It's a pretty average number for nationwide program monitoring, peer assistance programs, so not pharmacy specific, but healthcare professional specific. We're usually, the average is 20 to 40%, so we're kind of in the middle with that.
Do we have a goal for what we want to be at?
Ideally would be less than 30%.
Okay.
Any other questions for either Caroline or Raquel? So Raquel, I will tell you, we just came back from NABP Forum, and they talked about the meeting that all of y'all went to, and there was a lot of complimentary language in regards to the Texas PRN program. So on behalf of the board, we thank you for all that you do.
Thank
All
you.
right. All right, board members, with that, we'll go back up to D. And Danny, do you want to take us through the reports of committees and task force?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Thank you. The PMP Advisory Committee actually did meet this time on Thursday, September 25th. Dr. Mitch Engel was elected as the new presiding officer. Then Emily Donahue from Bamboo Health, she presented an update from Bamboo, included the year in review and some support statistics. The username, user base and system overview. She explained the display, flexibility, and the tile-based system of the PMP system. And they showed us some new functionality that they're working on. David Merriman gave the board's presentation, similar to what you guys will see here in a little bit. There was some discussion about how the data is displayed, and that brought about two proposals from the doctors. One is a recommendation to move the raw data closer to the top when you open it, so move the actual specific information closer to the top instead of the NARC care scores. And the second proposal was there was a request to see if there's a way that you can individualize displays per EHR systems. That's pretty much, that was the meeting. The next meeting scheduled for Friday, December 19th.
And the interagency prescription?
We didn't have a need for an interagency work group during these last few months, but we are working to schedule that meeting, the PMP interagency work group, to include all the stakeholders in the committee's activities in those two proposals that I mentioned. So we're working on that, hopefully within the next month or two.
All right. Any questions for Danny? All right. Ruben, would you like to take us through the financials?
Yes, Madam President. One moment. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. As a financial representative for the agency, I will be going over the first three agenda items within 3.1 regarding the agency's financial updates. I want to start with the financial documents provided to you, starting with E.1.1, which is the agency's review of fiscal year 2025 fourth quarter expenditures. This budget report reflects the agency's expenses activity as of August 31st. The next item on the agenda is E.1.2. This is the review of the board member travel budget. This spreadsheet details and reflects the board's in-state and out-of-state cumulative travel expenses as of the end of the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2025. And lastly is agenda item 3.1.3. For the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2025, there wasn't any consideration of material changes to contracts for goods and services for the board to review. And at this time, I'm available any questions you may have regarding the results of the end of the fiscal year. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for reviewing the items I presented.
Thanks, Ruben.
Any questions for Ruben? None. Ruben, thank you for all that you do. We appreciate all your good work.
Thank you, Madam President.
At this time, let's go down to E.4. And Danny, you want to take us through the strategic plan?
Oh, yes, ma'am. If you guys click on E.4, you'll see it's time to start working on this strategic plan. The top page is the timeline. So in September, this past September, the questionnaire was distributed to the interested parties for comments on what we'll use to develop this plan. Those comments came back, and they're here, they're down below, and it was distributed to you for, I guess, discussion to talk about what we need to add. After the discussion today, if there is any, we'll take those points and draft the plan December, January, and then I'll bring that back in February for a review and approval of that draft of our strategic plan. And then moving forward, after February, we'll move forward from there.
All right. Comments, questions?
I did find it really interesting. One thing that I think would really be worth looking at is that finding some sort of way for, and I know this would be challenging with the way that our rules are, but finding some way of supporting, promoting just culture safety principles. And so there are some comments on here about possibly having a confidential meta reporting system or near miss system or something like that that we could use to promote public safety. I think that would actually be worth looking into. It's a little tricky considering it would have some overlap implications or whatnot for like our disciplinary components. But I don't know. It's worth looking at what we could do. I think that would be worthwhile.
I think that's a safe. I mean, I don't know how safe. That's a Megan and Iman question, how safe it is, but it's a good idea. I mean, to think about. So.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. So the strategic plan will come back to us for us to review, and it'll go 2027 to 2029. So we will be looking at that at this time. At that time, it is now 10:18. How about if we go ahead and take a break until 10:30 and come back at that time? All right, it is now 10:31. We will show the meeting back in order. And at this time, I will ask Richard Galindo to come forward. Mr. Galindo is going to take us through the review and approval of the annual internal audit plan. And if you'll just make sure that microphone's on.
Good morning, Madam President, board members, Mr. Executive Director. My name and staff, my name is Richard Galindo. I'm from San Antonio, Texas, with the audit firm of Garza Gonzalez and Associates. We've been appointed, and we're presenting here today the proposed internal audit plan based on your approval. And this audit plan was prepared for audits and other functions to be performed in fiscal year 2026. The plan determines the scope and internal audit activities. The plan is naturally an ongoing process, and we're open to any changes that may occur as directed by the board. The plan has been prepared by the audit firm of Garza Gonzalez, following generally accepted government auditing standards, the internal national standards for the professional practice of internal auditing, and the Institute of Internal Auditors Code of Ethics, contained in the professional practices framework. Our methodology in performing the audit plan and risk assessment was to obtain various documents such as organizational charts, the GAA, financial and non-financial reports, your policies and procedures, prior year internal audit reports, and review of applicable laws and regulations, and audits from various third parties. We developed questionnaires. Some were filled out by the board president and the executive director and various selected staff. The questionnaire covered significant processes, systems, key personnel, contract management, and some of the risk factors the 8 risk factors that we use in our risk assessment is the materiality of the area, time since last audit or review, results of prior audits or review, personnel, policies and procedures of the audit area, the compliance requirements of the audit area, fraud, waste, or abuse, the risk, and board and management feedback that we received from the questionnaires. Based on our risk assessment, we identified 15 audit areas, and 3 were considered high risk, 4 were moderate risk, and 8 of low risk. The 3 high risk were licensing pharmacists, HR and payroll, and licensing pharmacies. This report includes both an audit summary as attachment A and a history of prior audits to have an idea of when the area was last audited. In fiscal year 25, the predecessor auditor performed the risk assessment, an internal agency compliance audit, follow-up of prior year audits, and preparation of the internal annual audit report. 24, in addition to the risk assessment and preparing the reports, they performed an audit of the IT services, and in fiscal year 23, they performed an audit of the enforcement audit. The scope of our audit and the areas that we consider as we're performing our procedures are reliability and integrity of financial and operational information, compliance with policies, procedures, laws, regulations, and contracts, the safeguarding of assets, effectiveness and efficiency of operation, and achievement of the organization's strategic objectives. The The task that we will perform this year is number one, completion of this fiscal year 2026 risk assessment and preparation of this internal audit plan. We are proposing to audit the licensing pharmacist area. We will perform follow-up of prior year audits performed by the predecessor audit. We will perform preparation of the 2026 internal audit annual report, which is submitted to the state auditor's office, and other tasks as you may assign us. We have a list of some of the procedures we plan to perform if the pharmacist audit is approved. We will review and obtain an understanding of the laws and regulations, review the written policies and procedures, review and assess the area's process and for issuing the licenses to pharmacists, and select a sample of licensing applications received during the year and test those for the laws and regulations and your policies and procedures. And we will be open to performing other audit procedures during our audit. Without going through the attachments, I'm open to any questions y'all may have of us.
Are there any questions for the audit team? All right, we do need a motion to approve the audit process and the new audit group. We have a motion from Donnie. Do we have a second? Yes, we have a second from Donna. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We look
Thank you
forward
very
to
much for
making-
having me today, and then we look forward to performing the procedures, and we'll be working with Ann Driscoll and Lily to come up with a proper scheduling.
All right, we appreciate you coming in today, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, board members, that takes us to E.5 and to Mr. Merriman and the prescription monitoring program.
Thank you, Madam President. Pardon me. Good morning, members of the board. During the previous quarter, we implemented one minor PMP system update aimed at prohibiting prospective PMP users from registering a second or duplicate account if their specific user data is already associated with an existing account. Next, I would like to highlight some of the PMP statistics compiled from PMP data reported during the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2025. These stats are summarized on the first page found behind tab E.5 on the agenda. There were a total of 5,247 new registered healthcare users that were granted PMP accounts during this period. By quarter's end, there were a total of 208,512 registered healthcare PMP users, which represents 74.9% of the total number of Texas licensed healthcare professionals that are eligible to have a PMP account. The percentage of eligible pharmacists that are registered with a PMP account decreased during this quarter 5 percentage points to 87.9%. Percentage of eligible physicians that are registered with a PMP account decreased 0.7% to 89.7%. There were a total of 81.1 million searches during this quarter. Of that number, 43.5% of all searches were conducted by pharmacists, while physicians conducted 42.4% of the total searches. Additionally, out of the total 81.1 million searches conducted, 66.2 million, or 81.7%, were integrated electronic health record searches rather than manual PMP searches. And finally, the graphic at the bottom right of the stat sheet illustrates the states or entities that Texas currently shares PMP data with, at least as of the quarter's end. I would like to highlight that on August 18th, Texas reached a data sharing agreement with the state of Nevada, which brings the total number of PMP data sharing partners to 40. And since August 31st marked the end of the fiscal year of 2025, we've included an annual summary sheet, which you'll find is page 2, just below the quarterly summary sheet we just discussed.
Are there any questions for David?
That's a quick question.
Yes.
In the past, we were doing some educational calls on PMP. Is that still ongoing or
You mean educational audit?
yeah, we would call the pharmacy and ask them, did you look this up or did you use the PMP? No?
Yes, sir. We're still doing the audits, the mandate audits, and our team is still currently educating pharmacists when we encounter a scenario where a pharmacist we've determined a PMP query didn't occur when it should have, according to the statute.
Are you finding it's gotten better, worse, same?
It's gotten better to a certain extent. It seems like we were at about 15% non-compliance before. I would say now we're probably at 90% of compliance, I should say. So there's oftentimes a 10%, roughly 10% each month might be. We might determine that 10% of the ones we audit should have conducted a PMP query.
And I guess we don't have any plans for any actions anytime soon for those that don't.
We've stayed in the educational mode.
We're still in educational mode. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for David? All right. Well, David, thank you and your team for all that you do. All right. At this time, we'll go to E.6 and turn it over to Megan.
Thank you. So we have one matter relating to pharmacist Amayosi. You've heard about this for the past couple of board meetings. The petitioner has an agreed board order that was entered back in February of 2017, and we received an order of non-disclosure relating to the underlying conduct. The petitioner filed a motion for enforcement of the order of non-disclosure by contempt with the 179th District Court in Harris County, and an attorney general from the Attorney General's office was appointed to handle the case. Since the last meeting, there was a hearing on October 23rd on petitioner's request for temporary injunction. There's no outcome of that hearing yet. There is a hearing on the Office of the Attorney General's motion to transfer venue to Travis County on January 6th, and on a hearing on the Office of the Attorney General's plea to the jurisdiction answer in response to the renewed motion for temporary ex parte order on January 15th. And that's everything.
All right. Any questions for Megan? All right. Caroline, do you want to take us through enforcement?
Sounds good. All right. So these are going to be the two charts under F. And then I guess we'll come back to do the update on legislative.
Oh, yes, we'll come back to Sean. Sorry.
All right. So F.1, this is your report on the closed complaints. So this adds the fourth quarter numbers for FY25. So that's the column number 4 on the top chart. So this is from June through the end of August. These are the complaints that were closed, and the top of the chart are those that are closed without disciplinary action by their type of closure, and then those with disciplinary action. And then because we have all 4 columns filled out, you also get column 5 filled out for the completed fiscal year. And the bottom is going to be your comparison of both the fiscal year and the last quarter numbers to those with disciplinary action and without disciplinary action for FY25 and the prior FY24. And then the back, or the second chart, this is the quarterly average. So this is a comparison of the quarterly average for fiscal year 25 to a quarterly average for fiscal year 24, as well as percent change from last fiscal year, 2 fiscal years ago to the current fiscal year we just completed. And then the same thing, breakout of those closed with disciplinary action to those closed without disciplinary action. All right, and then when you're ready, F.2, this is going to be your status of open complaints. So the top chart is a completion of fiscal year 25 numbers. So this includes the complaints that were received within the last fiscal year, comparison to those complaints that were closed that we just looked at, and then average resolution time for the agency for last fiscal year. And then chart 2 is going to be those complaints that are currently open with their aging category as of October 21st.
All right. Are there any questions for Caroline? Seeing none. Caroline, thank you for the report and for everything that enforcement does. Sean, we'll go up to E.7. You want to take us through legislation?
Yes, thank you. And I apologize, I'm having an issue with my throat, so if it sounds a little bit weird, it's that. Hello, attached in E.7 is a chart of legislation that affects the agency and or the practice of pharmacy. Please note that this chart was presented during the August board meeting, and as such, I will only be going over new information. Beginning with HB 1700, the bill establishes that each regulatory authority must create rules to standardize how health professionals document and retain patient consent related to various key aspects, namely treatment, data collection, and data sharing. Rules will be proposed in a future board meeting. Moving on to HB 5629. The bill facilitates occupational licensing for military service members, veterans, and spouses by requiring Texas state agencies to accept and expedite licenses from other states if they are similar in scope and in good standing. Related rules were presented for potential adoption earlier in the board meeting. Next, SB 912. The bill introduces a continuing education tracking system for healthcare practitioners in Texas, requiring licensing entities to verify continuing education compliance for license renewals. Related rules were presented for potential proposal earlier in the board meeting. Moving to SB 1080, the bill amends the Occupations Code to allow for the issuance of provisional occupational licenses to certain individuals with criminal convictions, emphasizing educational program completion as a condition. It permits the revocation of licenses for license holders imprisoned following a felony conviction, detailing specific criminal offenses that warrant such actions. Related rules were presented for potential adoption earlier in the board meeting. Moving to SB 1818, the bill mandates that Texas state agencies provide provisional licenses to military service members, veterans, and military spouses upon application, allowing them to temporarily engage in business or occupation while their full license is processed. Provisional licenses will expire either upon a final decision on the application or on 180 days after issuance. Related rules were presented for potential adoption earlier in the board meeting. That brings me to the end of the chart, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Sean?
I do have one. Do we need to also be looking at items introduced in special session? So bills that were passed at that time that may impact pharmacy practice.
We were monitoring those as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. So we will now go to G.2. We'll come back to G.1 just so as you're keeping track of stuff at 11:30. That is a scheduled event. So Megan, you want to take us through G.2?
Sure. G.2 is a report on all of the orders that have been entered by Danny. These are the ones that you have authorized the executive director to enter. This item does not need a vote and is just for your information. So if you do not have any questions on these, we will move on to the next part. Next, we have G.3 and G.4. G.3 are the proposed agreed board orders and default orders, and G.4 are the proposed remedial plans. These include both orders and remedial plans resulting from informal conferences and those proposed by mail per your previous instructions. You'll notice for the orders resulting from an informal conference, the chart indicates the board members that were at that informal conference. If you participated in the informal conference, we would automatically recuse you from that vote. So unless you have any questions on these, we would need a motion to approve the proposed agreed board orders, default orders, and proposed remedial plans. So that's both items G.3 and G.4.
Are there any questions? Is there a motion to approve? I've got a motion from Donnie and a second. I think Rick beat you out on that. A second by Rick Tisch. All those in favor? Any opposed? Those motions carry. All right. We will go through our miscellaneous topics and then go ahead. We're going to go into an executive session so that we can do a evaluation. And then at 11:30, we'll come back for G.1.1. So as far as our miscellaneous topics, is there anything that needs to be put on the agenda for our February board meeting?
I guess maybe it was a question if we needed to or not, Julie. The DSCSA deadline is in November 27th. Unless you got a small pharmacy, the 27th is the deadline to have that implemented. I'm not sure how the board's going to work with that. I know it's not a board rule. You know, I'm talking about the drug supply chain. So is there any actions we're going to be doing? Or are we going to do something different or something to talk about at a board meeting? Or because the deadline is the 27th of November.
I mean, as far as enforcement, that's a federal, so we would have to, boards or pharmacies would have to be in compliance with it at that point. I don't know.
I just don't know if our pharmacies are ready or if they're. It's not. I know it's not a state rule; it's federal, but it's an important item right now to get ready for. If people aren't ready for that.
Would you want us to potentially just put a reminder in our newsletter since it's not something that we would be enforcing or anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's good just to have
some education out there.
Educational note to remind you. And if they got a small pharmacy, 25 or less, they have an additional year. So, that clock will be running after that.
Okay. That's a good reminder. All right. Any other items for the February board meeting? All right. So just some previous and upcoming conferences. I'll mention that District 6, 7, and 8, that Danny, Donna, and I did attend that meeting. It was a really good meeting as far as, the districts getting together. There was great conversation about AI and, definitely looking at the supply chain as well as just other hot topics that were out there. Last week, Danny, Megan, and Terry from our compliance and myself were at the NABP forum. A lot of the topics were very similar, but it was a very collaborative meeting. Coming up later on this week, Megan and John will be attending the American Society for Pharmacy Law Seminar and will be representing us there. We do have informal conferences on November the 13th, and I will remind Ian and Donna of that. And then on November 17th and 18th will be the Texas Pharmacy Congress. Those meetings rotate. University of Houston is the sponsor, and this will be Lamar Pritchett's last meeting. So we do, as a board, want to thank him for everything he's done for Texas Pharmacists and the University of Houston College of Pharmacy. And then informal conferences will be December the 9th through the 11th, as well as January 13th and 15th. And then our next board meeting, hard to believe, is going to be February 3rd of 2026. The year has gone much, much faster than I think any of us really believe. So at this time, we will be looking to go into executive session. So We will, as we do this, have to clear the room, but I would like to ask for a board member to make a motion to go into executive session. Donna has made a motion to go into executive session. Do we have a second? All those in favor? Aye. All right, motion carries. We'll go ahead and go into executive session at this time. All right. A closed meeting was held for the purpose of conducting deliberations regarding personal matters under the authority of the Texas Government Code, Section 551.074. We went out at 10:55 on November the 3rd. There was no final action, decision, or vote in any manner made in that closed session, and any final action, decision, or vote will be made in open meeting. I will note that we did not finish our business, so we will, once we finish this next item, we will go back into executive session for just a tiny bit and then come back. So at this time, because this was scheduled in here, I am going to turn it over to John for G.1.
Thank you, Madam President. Board members, on July 10th, 2025, a proposal for decision was issued by an administrative law judge, or ALJ, the State Office of Administrative Hearings, in the matter of contested case of TSBP versus Jose Luis Hurtado. For procedural history, Mr. Hurtado holds pharmacy technician registration 102-316. The ALJ found by the preponderance of the evidence that on July 26, 2022, Mr. Hurtado was convicted of the felony offense of driving while intoxicated, his third offense. The trial court placed Mr. Hurtado on 3 years of community supervision with conditions, including that he serve 10 days of confinement in the county jail and participate in a portable alcohol monitoring program. In the proposal for decision, the ALJ concluded that under Board Rule 281.64, a 5-year probation is appropriate for a registrant who received a conviction or deferred adjudication for an alcohol-related offense within the last 5 years. Therefore, staff is in agreement with the ALJ and has prepared one board order for consideration, which imposes the recommended 5-year probation with rehabilitative conditions. Please remember that Board Rule 281.60b concerns the board's role in discipline and provides that in these matters the board is not bound by the recommendation of the ALJ, and the determination of the appropriate sanction is reserved to the board itself within the scope of the Pharmacy Act and the Administrative Procedure Act.
All right, board members, do you have any questions for John? Do we have a motion to accept the board order as written? I have a motion from Rick Tisch, second from Donnie Lewis. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right. All right, so board members, if I could have a motion for us to go back into executive session. I have a motion from Randy Martin. Do I have a second? Second from Donnie Lewis. All right, so at this time, a closed meeting will now be held for the purpose of conducting deliberations regarding personal matters under the authority of the Texas Government Code, Section 551.074. It is November the 11th, and it is 11:33, and at this time, we'll go back into executive session. I'm sorry, it's November 4th. Looking at the wrong date. All right. Our illustrious IT says that we're good to go. So I want to go ahead and announce that there was no action taken. It is now 11:45 on November the 4th, and we are back in executive session. So with the completion of the evaluation of the executive director, we've completed all of our agenda items. So at this time, I would take a motion to adjourn. I have a motion from, I know. I have a motion from Randy to adjourn. Do I have a second? I have a second from Haysha. All those in favor? Any opposed? We will show that this meeting of the Texas State Board of Pharmacy is now adjourned.